So you're hot on the heels of Space Marine 2. You've finished the game, you've blasted the multiplayer, and now you're hungry for more. What is Warhammer 40,000? What is everything? There's 1,000,001 creatures and chapters and legions and aliens and heretics. Where do I go next? You're wondering that right now, maybe, or maybe you're not. But if you are, this is the book for you. DK Books very kindly sent me this copy of the Warhammer 40,000 Ultimate Guide, and I think you're going to like it. So let's have a little look inside and see why this book is going to be your next step to learn everything about Warhammer 40k. So we start with a very brief introduction over 2 pages, and then we get into a timeline of events. Now this is a behind the scenes sort of timeline. This includes things like the creation of White Dwarf magazine, the introduction of Warhammer video games, upgrades to the models, and the opening of Warhammer World in Nottingham, which is kind of like, it's your mecca if you're into 40k. It's the Holy Land. This is where you go. This is followed by a brief little section showing you the actual hobbying aspect, which is basically where the models come in a box and they come on sprue, generally like a plastic injected molded sprue thing, and you cut the models out and you paint them. And then we get to the first major section of the book where we go into the Imperium. So this naturally starts with the Space Marines. They are the poster boys for the entire game. Particularly the Ultramarines, you'll be familiar with those from Space Marine 2 if you weren't already. And yes, you've got a whole bunch of different Space Marine units, and that kind of shows you the format that the rest of this book is going to take. It shows you all the models from a particular range, or as in all the various types of units would be more accurate. Not every single model, because there's like thousands of them, but it introduces the various units, introduces like the concepts behind them, why they exist, and shows you some of the little features of each individual unit as well, which is really cool. And one of my favourite features from this book is occasionally you get one of these little history pages where it shows you the history of a model or a particular character. In this case it's Marneus Calgar, and it shows you how he evolved from his original model where he looks like he's sitting on a toilet all the way up to the current model on the left there. And you can see the evolution of how the range changed from basic looking metals all the way up through resin and into plastic, which is really cool. So we continue on through the Space Marines, and then we start getting to the individual Space Marine chapters. This book isn't big enough to hold all of them, but it does feature a few of the major ones, such as the Dark Angels, who are my babies, with my Primarch, Lionel Johnson. And you've also got Space Wolves, as various other chapters as well, like the White Scars and the Salamanders, and it's really cool to see that. And then we go on into some of the other Imperium forces as well. You've got your Astra Militarum here. They're kind of like your bulk, your everyday people of the Imperium, your normal human beings, and they're the ones who tend to get the most smeg. And now if the Imperium wasn't quite evil enough for you, here's the Chaos. So you've got Chaos Demons to start off with, so you've got the 4 big greater demons on display first up and foremost, which are absolutely wonderful, huge, giant models that are absolute joy to paint up as well. And they're absolutely menacing on the tabletop, which is really cool. I've said really cool so many times already in this video. And yeah, it goes on and it shows you all the various different factions within Chaos as well. So you've got Chaos Demons, you've got like other kind of demon things. I don't even know how you describe some of this stuff. You've got like demon engines, and then you're into the Chaos Space Marines, which are obviously your big bads for the whole setting, ever since the Horus Heresy, really. And then the final major section is the Xenos section, which basically is your aliens. So you can see we're starting here with the Orcs, which are these kind of zany, basically your comic relief faction in the whole setting. They just want to fight, they love it. Fighting is in their DNA, literally. They're basically space mushrooms who are angry. That basically sums the orcs up. And again here you can see the evolution of Ghazghkull Thraka, one of the basically the big bad orc. He's kind of the big boss of the orcs from the War on Armageddon. Tyranids, if you've played with Space Marine 2, then you're very, very familiar with the Tyranids already. Basically, aliens from another galaxy or galaxies. They've come from outside of the Milky Way and they just want to eat and reproduce and eat and reproduce. They're not evil, they're not good, they're just hungry. That's basically their whole shtick. Oh, and then you've got the Gene Stealer cult, which are basically Tyranids, Jehovah's Witnesses. Eldari, one of the oldest races in the entire galaxy. They're basically space elves and they come in various varieties. You've got your craft worlds, which are your main, in inverted commas, good Eldari, although they're not really good as such. You've got the Drukari, which are your dark Eldar. They're the kind of like depraved, really genuinely evil Eldar. And then you've got sort of grey area ones like the Harlequins and the Inari as well. So now we move on to the Tau Empire. These are basically space fish in battle suits. They're not good in melee. They're very good at shooting. And they are, I suppose you'd call them one of the more progressive races, although whether that's going to be for their benefit or not remains to be seen because the 40k universe is very hostile. But they're fairly optimistic as far as races in 40k go. And they do have a lot of very high technology that the Imperium would probably envy if it wasn't Xenos filth. And skipping kind of towards the end of the book, we've got the Leagues of Votan. These are kind of like both the newest and one of the oldest races in the Warhammer 40k setting. They're basically space dwarves, previously once known as the Squats. They'd kind of like disappeared from the setting for a few decades, but they came back a couple of years back with a new look and a new name. And they've got this kind of really cool kind of mining thing going on. They've got a very cool aesthetic. And yeah, they're one of the newer ones. So the range isn't as big as a lot of the others yet, but I'm sure at some point that will continue to grow. So after the size guide at the end there, showing you kind of the scale of a lot of the models, it has a little index, and then that's basically the end of the book. So like you can see, it's not really a book of deep lore. It doesn't go into the kind of depth that your novels does. Even your average White Dwarf magazine probably goes a bit more in depth when it comes to the actual straight up lore and storyline behind the various factions. But as a book that kind of gives you a brief overview of every single faction, showing you what they look like, what the variety of units are, how they look on the tabletop, and what roles they perform, I think this is an excellent book for that. And if you just want to kind of familiarise yourself with the various races and then say, you know what, I like the look of this particular group, I want to read some stuff about them, and then you can use it as like a springboard to go in and take on some more deeper lore from each of these factions. So yeah, I do want to thank DK Books for sending this over. I really like this book. It's a brilliant coffee table book, very useful little painting guide of sorts as well, because the pictures are quite larger than models, so it's really nice just to have it as a reference book if you're painting something for the first time. You can really kind of see what colours the heavy metal painters have used, so I really like it for that. But yeah, if you're getting into 40k, are you going to pick this book up? It's about £25 on Amazon, I believe. So if you want a copy, go and pre-order it. I think it's out on October the 3rd, which isn't very long away at all. If you enjoyed this, please drop me a subscribe and a like, and I'll see you again in the next video.